Okay. Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be back and be joined with by these wonderful people. Today we have Teya Sepinuck and George. Thank you for joining
Hello.
us, George. Hi, Millie. Thank you for joining us. Um, it's really wonderful to see you and have you join us today after this, I should say, a period of interruption. Well, it is forced interruption. We had to pause for some time, but we really miss meeting you, everyone, and seeing you and reading your contributions and talking to you and chatting with you. So that's why we're here. We are back, resuming our sessions, our meetings, as part of Reconnect. So we are reconnecting, re-engaging, and hopefully we'll continue to do so. Um, I am really privileged to introduce our speaker today, Teya. Teya, I don't want to make it a formal introduction, but I should say he is a great human being. I've talked to Teya over Zoom a few weeks ago, and I should say I personally was touched by um, how Teya views solidarity with the others, how she perceives others when it comes to supporting those others, empowering them, strengthening them, giving them voice, giving them power. And you will feel it when Tia starts talking to you and you talk to her that this positivity and the positive vibes start coming into your direction. Um, Tia is the founder of something called Theater of Witness in Philadelphia, USA. And I've sent you some of the work, the great work that Tia has been doing. And if you haven't watched the links, the videos I sent you, please make sure that you visit the website and explore the videos I recommended in the group. And also make sure you watch an interview with Tia so you get to know more about her work and her spirit of solidarity, of passion, of positivity towards human being, not only Palestinians or Palestinian cause, towards everything human. So here we are really delighted to have you today to talk to our students, our community, and I'm sure those who will join us today will go with a really positive uh, feeling, and those who will watch the recording later on will feel that wow, this must have been a wonderful session. Tia, over to you.
That might be the most beautiful introduction I've ever received. I just first of all just need to say I feel so humbled to be talking to you who are living through what you're living through. And as you can probably imagine, there are so many of us whose hearts are breaking constantly. So this felt to me like this amazing opportunity to speak with you, look into some of your eyes, hopefully hear from you some of your stories and your heart and your soul. I titled this talk "The Soul of Story." I think I wanted to actually say the soul and medicine of story. I think there's all kinds of stories that we hear all the time. There are many negative stories that we make up. There are the horrific reality stories that are unfolding with you right in the middle of it. And then there are also the stories that touch a soul sort of beyond a lifetime. And I think beyond a one human being to its own body, that we really connect with each other on some deep level that is really about love. And through the 40 years that I've been doing this work with helping people tell their stories, I've worked with men serving life sentences in prison. I've worked with former perpetrators and survivors of domestic abuse, with refugees and immigrants who've undergone so much trauma. I was in Northern Ireland for 5 years working with ex-combatants from both sides, as well as security forces and people who really had to come to terms to take accountability to what they had done and participated in. And I have seen people forgive in ways that I never thought were possible. I have seen people go deep inside to that place where um, the life force lives, the light lives, the magic lives. And there have been times I especially remember sitting in a cell with a Polish prisoner who had not had a visitor in 20 years. And I remember, I feel like I was alone with him, but there was a translator because I didn't speak Polish. But I remember thinking, there is nowhere I would rather be than to be with this being right now who is so giving of his heart. And how did I get so lucky to get to walk with him and to get to walk with other people? So I should say also I'm from a Jewish background. I am beyond appalled and horrified at what is happening in our name. That feels like it has nothing to do with real Judaism. It has to do with militarism and nationalism and Zionism and all kinds of things that separate people and fear. And so it feels especially, I think that's why I feel so humbled that you would even listen to somebody from a Jewish heritage at this point. So I thank you for that. So I just want to, I think I wanted to start with a story, and it's a story within a story. I was working in a prison that was a maximum security prison with men who had come to terms with really having done some horrendous things, and some who had been locked up for life, really, and were innocent. Every story was in there, but they were in this very, very dark place. And I was listening to them, and they were talking about their children and how their children were growing up without them and their victims. And I decided then and there that we would make a piece with men in prison, their children, and victims, and try to bring them all together. And it was really a 3-year project, taking me quite a while to get victims who were willing to be with the men who had killed people, not in a situation of war, but maybe in a situation of war of poverty, war of racism. Maybe that's a different kind of war internal war that people live with. And I found some extraordinary people, and we did this piece called Beyond the Walls. But I had remembered a story from a long time ago about Reuben Hurricane Carter. And I started the piece with this story, and in the audience sitting in darkness, just hearing this story. This is a story about dark and light, despair and miracles. It's the story about seeing that which usually can't be seen, the invisible. It's the story that inspired the creation of this piece. Reuben Hurricane Carter, a famous prize fighter, spent 20 years locked up on death row for a crime he didn't commit. Filled with hatred and rage, he spent 10 years holed up in solitary confinement in the dark bowels of the prison. With no running water, human contact, or light, he went on an inward journey of his soul that caused him to rethink his embittered stand. One very hot summer day, after a long walk around the prison yard, he rested and let his eyes gaze on the prison wall. A tiny, tiny pinprick of light sparkled through the bricks. Gradually, as he looked, that light continued to expand until it grew into the size of a hole. For one short moment, the entire world outside was visible through the wall. And then slowly, the wall closed itself back up. That vision filled Carter with hope and a sense of possibility. He began reading and corresponding with people on the outside until eventually he was granted his freedom. This is a story for all of us to hold as we journey together now into the dark. So that was the prelude to this piece. And I don't know if any of you, maybe some of you were not on camera, so I won't know how many of you got to see any of the work in the links, but one of them was of my dear friend and colleague, Hakeem Ali, who was part of this project Beyond the Walls. And Hakeem died 2 weeks ago, so this is in honor of him too. Hakeem also spent 40 years in prison and had been very embittered and spoke to me individually the first time he had ever told this story of having had his hands around someone's neck and they were pleading for their life and he didn't stop. And he kept looking at me saying, I didn't stop. And he just opened up and all the tears, maybe of a lifetime, came out. And it was a moment of such deep connection, him a large Muslim Black man and me a short white Jewish woman. None of those things made any difference. There was just a moment of trust between us. And through the years, through the whole legacy of his father's story and the generational, intergenerational trauma that came to him, that he took on, he became someone completely transformed, and really became a man of great love and connection. And I picture him always, he used to call me, come here, baby girl, come here, my baby girl. His words, an act of words of endearment. I think I've never seen anyone with that much transformation. And that's the piece that just really moves me, that people can come from places of such hatred and such block and such anger and rage and fear, and something can open. Something can open. And we never know when that is, when it will be that pinprick of light through the wall, when someone's consciousness can open. And I feel like I want to dedicate my life to that. Both for myself, to remember that in the end, all we're going to die with is, how have we loved? How have we loved in this life? Who have we been able to open our heart to? And the resilience and strength. I kind of lost the beginning of that train of thought. So I've been doing this work for 40 years, walking with people into the soul of their stories, very, very deep, horrible things that people have done, that people have witnessed, probably maybe nothing compared to what you're living through and witnessing in these moments. And somehow they have found their resilience. They found that place of strength, love. Doesn't mean that they don't get pushed down by the waves, but they found a way to rise and to stand. And I feel like that is all we can offer each other now. And how can we do that? So this work is really always about the people that I work with. I interview them for a long period of time. I take great notes in their words because I really believe everyone is a poet. And then I bring the group together, and sometimes I have to do a lot of pre-work before that. When I was working in Northern Ireland, especially in the second piece that I was working on, there was a woman, Kathleen Gillespie, whose husband had been made into a human bomb. He had been kidnapped by the IRA, taken to a army checkpoint and blown into smithereens. And the first piece that we made, one of the police officers who had been on the body recovery team had spoken about picking up human remains, and that in that truck, really, there were no remains because it was such a huge bomb. And we were afraid, and we knew that Kathleen might come to see that piece. So we spoke with her beforehand to say, just be aware, we'll be talking about Patsy's horrible, horrible murder. And she came and she stood up and she said, I want to talk to Robin because I want to know if he knows what was in the coffin. Because she said, I always felt that Patsy wasn't really in that coffin, but I want to be in next year's piece. And so at that moment, I knew we would make a piece with all women. who had been impacted by the Troubles in Northern Ireland, the war. The word troubles is such a understatement of what happened in Northern Ireland. And I found another woman who had been in the IRA, and she had been responsible for moving guns and explosives around. And she was going to meet Kathleen, and I wanted them to know that they were going to meet each other and be prepared. And I know that first meeting, there were so many tears. So both of them just said they'd stayed up all night not sleeping. And Anne had been terrified to meet Kathleen because of, she wasn't responsible for Patsy's death, but she had been responsible for others' deaths. And Kathleen held her in her arms and said, "It's all right." I don't know where that kind of human forgiveness comes from. I really don't. And I saw that in Beyond the Walls. There was a day when the mothers whose children had been murdered were off stage. We had finished the show, and one of the men who had been in prison, who had talked about tying a man up and leaving him in a pool of blood, he told his story many times. He had cried, but he came off stage and he just broke open. I mean, he couldn't stop sobbing. His whole body was just melting. And the women, all of the women held him and rocked him. And he had his head on their breasts. And I don't even know what to say about a moment like that. That didn't get shown on stage, but it is what happened. And I guess I've seen that over and over. That's why I do this work. So I think I just would like to stop there. I feel like I've maybe put out a lot, and I could talk and talk and talk. I would love to hear if there are questions or anything that you'd like to respond to, whether you saw any of the links to the videos or not.
If you have any comments, guys, please feel free to unmute uh, and ask your question or say your suggestion or comment, or you can send it in the chat box. Just drop your comment or question. Oh, it's really saddening to hear of the loss of Hakim to you. It's really sad.
Yeah.
I've watched his story and
a great man. Yeah. Anytime that you have a comment, put it in, and then Ahmed will tell me. But I'll keep going then.
sure.
I was doing this work for quite a while, and a woman who was on our board said, I'd like you to teach us about your guiding principles. And I said, "What guiding principles?" And she said, "The ones that you have." And I said, I don't have any." And she said, "Yes, you do." And so I thought about that, and I started writing down, and I realized, oh, these are things that I say all the time. I guess I do have them, and I didn't even know that I did. So I think I want to tell you what some of them are. So I think at the very foundation of this work, and I want to say, Theater of Witness is really predicated on being, it is a form of art, but it is really a spiritual journey, and it is really a soul journey. And it is also, in some ways, social service, in some ways, education. It kind of bridges all the confines of education or life. But for me, it's mostly a spiritual journey. And at the heart of it is not knowing. How can we go into listening to someone's story without bringing any preconceptions, without knowing what they're going to say, what it means, where it's going to go, what we can do together. And I find that place, that level ground of being open to, really, we don't know, is so extraordinary. So I try to always do that with being willing to not know. And as an example, I'm always working with people who's lived through really big and deep life experiences. And of course, I can't know, like I don't know at all what it feels like for you. and Gaza. I can't even imagine. But I know that if I was working with you, I would try to just open myself and listen to whatever you wanted to say, which is really one of the other points, which is to bear witness. And I look at this work and I think the first thing that happens is when people start to tell their stories, they're bearing witness to themselves. They're hearing their own stories, sometimes for the first time when they're speak it out loud with no time restrictions, with somebody just willing to listen. They can say whatever they want to say. I have to make it, they can tell me anything. And I think that bearing witness to themselves and then knowing I am bearing witness to them. And then we come into a group to begin to make a piece and they bear witness to each other. And that becomes this moment when, especially when I'm bringing people together across divides of being enemies or huge differences, they are able to see, which is one of the other points I'm completely out of order, that in one sense, everyone is me. I could be, I could be the Israeli soldier. I could be not Yahoo. I could be you. I could be a child starving. I could be a Hamas person. It, it, we all have all of that within us. And sometimes that's unbearable to think about, but it is really like, how can that happen? And I don't know why, but it happens every time in these groups that people open to each other and they say the most incredible things. Um, I remember working on a piece about domestic abuse, and there was a woman who had just been horribly, horribly, horribly abused by her husband. And in the group was a man who had abused his wife terribly also. And one day, pretty far along in the rehearsal process, he just couldn't stop crying. And he was saying to his wife, I was supposed to save your beauty. I was supposed to save you. And I failed. And he just couldn't get past that. And I heard that and thought, I have to hold a mirror up so that he sees the part of him that had that intention to save her, that had that goodness in him, even though he didn't. He needs to see his own goodness. But no matter what I said, it wasn't making any difference. And this woman who had been so abused looked at him one day and in a fierceness of truth telling, she said, Luis, you have to let go of that. You have to forgive yourself. And he later said it was like she took an arrow right into his heart and literally split his heart open and it went in. And I know it was because it was her saying that to him, somebody who would be the last person in a way. And that's where the healing begins. That holding the mirror up is what I call finding the medicine. You know, I believe that there's medicine in all of our stories. Every story has medicine in it. And sometimes it takes a little digging, and oftentimes we don't see our own medicine. But I believe when I'm listening to people, they're actually giving me all kinds of clues about their own resilience, their own strength, their own inner beauty, their own love, their own taking accountability, their own truth telling. I mean, the medicine can be so many things, but holding that mirror up so people can speak that wisdom and trust their own medicine is truly so important and so important for all of us. I think when we hear somebody else taking doing a heroic act, which sometimes might be the smallest act of love, it may be so simple, but seeing that we are capable of that, you know, and I feel like in a sense, we all have to look through that wall now, seeing that pinprick of light. Where is that light? The other very major piece of these guiding principles is that the blessing is in the middle of the wound. That's a hard one. Um, I think you all can't escape it because you are living the wound right now. But I think us in the United States, there can be so much distraction. We often can do everything to ignore the pain, the grief, the tragedy, the depth of it all. the horror of what humans can do to each other. But going into that wound, going deep in, is where that light is, always. And yeah, just sitting in it can be terrifying, but beautiful, beautiful. And then I talk about listening with the ears of your heart, of our hearts. Um, Again, it's so easy to listen from judgment. It's so easy to listen with knowing the answer, knowing the righteous justice, which is all true. But sometimes just listening with the ears of our heart. I always think, had I grown up the way someone else had grown up and I had really been in their shoes, would I have been different? If I had had their family history, if I had been inculcated with everything, would I have been different? I don't know. So that's listening with the ears of our heart. And then becoming the vessel. We are all the vessel of the potential for love and hope. And I know we've all had moments when we've been with somebody or we've read something in a book or, we've heard a piece of music, but there was something that opened up joy in us or some place of grace. And we all have that potential to be that vessel for ourselves and each other. And I think it's about the state of our being, not the state of our doing, not even the state of our speaking, but who we are on the inside. Another one is holding the paradox, holding the two sides that do not make any sense when it feels like things are in a binary. And how can our consciousness become bigger than that? And again, I feel so humbled saying that to you all because, again, it's easy for me to say it from my seat right here. But I also do know that it is letting ourselves open to a place that is bigger than everything. When we can get to a higher state of consciousness, really, that's where transformation happens. There are more of these, but I think I just want to say maybe the one of them that is so important is falling in love. I don't mean romantic love, but I mean that kind of love where we can just love somebody through and through for who they are. I think often of being in a forest and thinking of all the trees and how a birch tree is so different from an evergreen tree or a citrus tree, and that all of them are different and that we are also different. And how can we open to fall in love with somebody? And I know these may seem like very strange principles for something that looks like theater, but this is about being real and authentic. And it is my hope when people see Theater of Witness that they feel like the whole room is bearing witness together and that everyone is me and that the medicine is being dispersed and that we are all being inspired by the best of ourselves without negating speaking about the worst. Yeah. So again, I want to just stop. I've spoken a lot. I'd love to hear from you. And if anyone wants to share a story or just say how you're feeling, I would love to hear from you.
Feel free, guys, if you want to unmute your microphone and tell a story or ask a question or send a comment or suggestion. Marah was talking about the idea of medicine, and she liked the idea of medicine, how stories are like medicine to our wounds. And yeah, and I personally like the idea of bearing witness. Now, I can link the name of theater of witness to how telling stories, bearing witness, and creating witnesses. Ruba, please go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say one little thing about that
Yeah,
is I talk about stories, but I don't ever talk about grabbing someone's story or taking someone's story, because I believe our stories or our life experiences, an accounting of our lives, is sacred. And so I really never wanted to work with actors. I want the people to be themselves, because when someone is on stage telling the truth about their life, poeticized through their own words, sometimes with music and other things to enhance it, um, we bear witness to even their skin, even the way their face moves. It's the fullness of the humanness. So, so much gets conveyed non-verbally as well as verbally. So that bearing witness and to the story, it is to the story, but it is to the person whose story that is coming through their pores.
wonderful. Ruba, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for this great session and for your words, because those words really mattered for me and touched me. There is a question that popped to my head when you mentioned the idea of everyone is a poet. So basically, can a writer write about something that they never experienced? Like, I'm not talking about the fiction part, but about human experience that a writer himself never experienced. And if he succeeded in doing so, would it be as good as the writer who had an experience in that topic? So would he have a better piece or of writing, or as good as his piece of writing? So if he's like so gifted or smart at using words, would that be enough?
I am so unqualified to answer that question. Um, I'm really unqualified. I would say, I'm sure at times people can feel, and an experience can come through them that's not their own experience, that's in the collective consciousness. And we know of great poets and great fiction writers. So, the answer is yes. I think when I was saying everyone is a poet, I didn't mean that all of us can sit down and write write a great poem. I think what I meant is that when you listen to somebody speak, they actually, the words they're using can be a kind of poetry. It often needs to be highly edited, but it's all there. All the word choices, the cadences, it's there. So I try to find what are the parts that give me goosebumps when I'm listening to somebody. I'm looking also for, one of the other guiding principles is finding the gold in the story. I'm finding the medicine and the gold. The gold is sometimes the kind of the artistic thing to hang my hat on. I remember when I was working with one of the lifers in prison, who since died in prison. His name was Al. He talked about still standing. He just kept saying, "I'm still standing." And you see if I can find his part. I was thinking about reading that. Um, I don't want to spend much time looking for it, but it will either show up there. Yeah. So again, he said all of these words, but not necessarily exactly like this. He said, seasons change, prisoners come and go, life is grow old, some die never leaving this place. Hearts beat, blood flows, wars begin, families disintegrate, new men enter the system, and new leaders fight for justice. Children and grandchildren are born and grow. Some meet their fathers for the first time in prison. Leaves fall, colors change. I watch it all from behind these walls. And then he goes, I've seen seasons change, blood flows through my veins, but I remain still standing. I've seen spring and fall behind prison walls, but I remain still standing. I've seen the face of war and hate. I've heard the call of reason. I've seen the power of love on earth, and I believe in healing. I've seen seasons change, blood flows through my veins, but I remain still standing. So those were his words, but he didn't sit down and write that. But I definitely, that became a song actually, where the men all sang, and it was very powerful, but they just looked at each other. They looked at each other like coming and going. Just the idea of thinking of the relentlessness, the years, how many years, all of that. But what does it mean to remain still standing? Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question adequately.
Yeah, this is so amazing. Thank you so much.
Mm. I would love to know if any of you did watch any of the films, what you felt or thought, or how it relates to what you're living through now.
Really nice feedback and comments coming through. And, just a bit of background, it might help. Here, some of the students who are joining us today are part of a project called Digital Storytelling, and the title of the project is Resilient Voices. So they have been writing stories, they have been sharing their experiences, and I'm sure what you've been talking about really relates to their experiences of writing, of sharing their experiences and creating witnesses to their stories. And this is evident in how they are moved and changed by what you're talking about. Like Mujahid says, your words, delivery, and tone of voice were really captivating. You had me listening with full admiration. This is the experience I was telling you about from the beginning, guys, that this is the feeling that you will go away with after the session, after hearing and listening to what he is going to say. But if you have a particular question or comment that you want Teya to help you with when it comes to writing your story, sharing your experience or sharing your narrative, if you want help with how to make sure that what you write and the style you adopt in writing create witnesses to your experience in your stories and helps in creating that witness, please feel free to ask.
I want to say two things about that. The first is that you may want to partner up in some way and find a way for one person to really speak fully and the other person to only, and I don't mean only like small only, big only, listen, not even to give feedback, just to listen. I think we so rarely just listen to each other. And when you are the speaker and you feel like you can even cry and just have a long silence before you don't have any idea what's going to emerge, something new can happen. And so as a part of your process of writing, even if you're writing individually, you may want to see if you could find a partner who would do that with you. And then, you know, when you feel ready, they can tell you this is what I often do in our groups when we first come together as a full group, creating a theater of witness piece. I ask people to just respond to what most moved them from the speaker. What did you hear that really moved you? And not go into your own story, not say it reminded me of the time when, oh, I know just what you mean. None of those things. Just, whoa, I was so touched when you said X. Or I wonder X, and just leave somebody with a question. And they can take it or not. And when I do this in a group and people give response, I don't have the speaker respond. It's not a dialogue at that point. It's just, and then they don't have to take anything that doesn't fit. Because to be so vulnerable is so difficult. But I just heard something again last night online, somebody speaking about it was Byron Brown, the great, I don't even know what to call her, but she's this amazing woman who teaches about really having authentic and productive relationships with ourselves and each other. And she talked about you can't have a really good relationship with anyone without vulnerability. And I know how hard it is to be vulnerable when you are living in a war zone. I mean, I want to back up. I don't know how hard it is. I can't imagine, but I can only guess. But if you have each other and you can find ways to open up, it can be really extraordinary. So that may help. And the other thing I wanted to say is I have been in some ways waiting my whole life to want to work with Palestinians. I did one piece with in America that was with people who were going to receive a potential fallout and did for 9/11, and it was with refugees coming from all kinds of places. And one of the women in their ream was from Ramallah, and she was a Palestinian growing up in Israel and talked about growing up under the occupation. And I loved working with her, and I would do anything. So if any of you want to even just have a session for me listening with you, or if you want to work on something that I could help you with, I would do it hands down in 2 seconds. Because I'm getting near the end, I'm 75 now, and I don't know how much longer I'll do this work, but this is the work that would speak to my heart the most.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Tia, for this credit. Minna was talking about the importance of having someone to listen to your story, because she says, in my opinion, every person has his own story, even those who sit on the sidewalk all the day. And I'll ask Minna to come in now, because she was talking to me this afternoon, and I'll ask her to give the example she was mentioning, because it really tells a powerful story. But some people are afraid that there is no one to hear their stories. When they have some people to listen, they become creative in writing and telling their story. Minna, would you like to share what you were telling me this afternoon about the importance of every single story, even those children who are chasing free water and free food and
Okay, I will be happy to share you. I was talking this morning about the words of the streets, and I did it as like a storytelling on SoundCloud. If you want the link, I can share it with you. I was talking about the words we listen on the streets, and we think these words are just there's no importance for these words, and we do not know what is the hidden stories between these letters and words. So when I came deeply and listened carefully to these words, I found that there is a hidden story within these stories. So one of the boys, or one of the children of our childhood, was running all the way and screaming happily, "I took a shower today, and the water came today, and I took a shower." This child was like, the water is rare in our neighborhood, so it was like something from the heaven that he took a shower. And there were two men walking and talking together, and they were saying, "We fed up. We just want to live." And this thing, we all say to each other that we fed up. We just want to live when we will live like a human beings and these things. So this is another story. They are like. They really, really fed up because the food shortage and the water shortage. These things are like making them crazy, and all the time we just want to find food, find water, find a place to go if the places are not that safe. So these are some of the stories from the streets. So when you go and listen to the people, you will know that there is a hidden stories within their words. So and another thing, I found like a group of children. They were walking and holding their pots and going to the charity kitchen. And they were screaming like, "Who's the first? Who's the second?" They were at the same time where they supposed to be at their school line and like fighting who's going to lead the line and go to the school to the classroom first. So at this time, the children were so happy that they are going to find food. They supposed to be playing at the yard, not here. So there is a story within everything, every single thing here in Gaza. There's a stories.
Mm, mm. I think you're on to something that's sitting right there for you to pick up. You spoke so beautifully. I hope you will write it. The story within the story, the hidden story, all the voices on the street, and your voice, what you're thinking throughout all of this. Thank you. Mm.
Wonderful. Thanks, Minna. And you're sharing the podcast. Okay? Yeah, that's the link to the audio story that you were referring to. So thank you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Any other comments or questions, please, guys, feel free to ask. I'd love to hear from you. Maraf is asking about the strategy for writing a story. If it's a long story, should it be written in chunks or it is better to write it in at once?
You're all asking me questions I can't answer. I think we all have different ways of our creative process unfolding, and the mystery is finding what works for ourselves, and it may change through time or through one project to the next, one story. I always think of this. I know I may have some of the facts wrong about this, but I remember reading out, the great writer Alice Walker was writing The Color Purple, and she was don't quote me on the actual facts, but I think she was living on the East Coast of in Connecticut of the United States. And she had a daughter at the time who was still school age, and she was writing, and one of the main characters would not come to her. Celie just would not come to her in Connecticut. And so Alice took off, moved her daughter all the way cross country so that the character Celie, the fictional character, would come to her on the West Coast. And I loved that. I loved the idea that she trusted enough the mystery that there was a character that wouldn't come through her unless she changed her life and changed her location. So I know that that is not something that you all can do at all. But I think that idea that if you are writing a fictional story, to listen in to what the process might be for that particular story. How does it want to come out? And it may be different than you think. It may be a few words. It may be coming at midnight only, it might be, I have no idea. I think, one of the other guiding principles for theater of witness is to trust the process. And, I guess I have a pretty tight process that in some ways is completely open because it's based on not knowing. But I do have certain, structures that I use even within that not knowing. And I just lost my train of thought. And you never know where it's going to go, and to trust it. So there have been, I can't tell you how many times I've been on my knees thinking, I am working on this project and I don't know where it's going, and we have a performance coming up and we're nowhere, and I have to find a solution, and this is not going to work. And then I just trust, okay, these are these people that are willing to tell their stories. A solution is going to, trust it enough to not let your doubt get in the way, because doubt can be a very evil character. And it has always worked so far. So to trust that process. Yeah.
And I guess it depends on how you define long story, Mara. If you're talking about a story of 1,000 words or a story of 10,000 words. So yeah, so be careful when it comes to length. What do you mean by a story that is long? This is a question. I'm just trying to read a comment or a question from Mujahid. He says, I find it hard to tell mass people how we go through because how we go through or what we go through before, because I feel they are getting enough with our stories. Any best practical practices or tips so we can influence other people? I'm sure in our scope groups, telling a story as it is loaded with our emotions would have that influence. Yet doing so with mass audience would be so difficult. Would you like to unmute Mujahid or and ask the question and see what you mean? Or because I feel that your question is, how can we, yeah, that's fine. How can we influence audience when telling our stories? Yeah.
I think we never know. I always talk about the ripple effects. I know if you probably think about your own lives, there are probably people who deeply influenced you and maybe even changed the course of your life that have no idea that they did that. I'll just use as an example in my own life. When I was in college, I picked up a hitchhiker, and there was some quality of him, and somehow he told me that he meditated. And I knew in my body right then at age 22, oh, I am going to learn to meditate. And it's been a practice that's now, 53 years of a deep, serious meditation practice. That man, I have no idea his name. I can't recall what he looked like. He will never know that he completely changed the course of my life. So I think the question is, how can you, or the larger you, tell your stories in a way that moves you, that feels like you are saying what you need to say, the way you need to say it, and the others of you are also being moved, you're being moved by each other, and do it with authenticity and bravery and truth-telling. And even if you never know who it influences, I can almost guarantee it would be impossible for it not to influence people. We just don't know. And a lot of the times, when I was doing especially the prison work, we opened the prison to having groups come in, and we had victims groups come in, and we had legislators come in. But people often said, well, what are you doing to help get these men out who shouldn't be having life sentences? And I knew I had no idea whether anything I was doing was going to have any influence. Like I'm not a politician, I'm not an activist in that way, but I had to trust that just by opening the heart and having the ripple effects, there was a possibility that someday someone somewhere who did have those other gifts would be able to do something. And we just don't know. We don't know.
I like that perspective of how you first ensure that you tell your story in a way that you are comfortable with. Because once you are telling your story in a way that comes from inside, that you are comfortable with, then don't worry about others. Because ultimately, if as we said last time, if it comes from out of your heart, it will reach the hearts of others. And that's kind of the connection that happens from heart to heart.
And
Yes,
you are,
Martin.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Teya, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you're all asking questions that are a little bit out of my realm, because in Theater of Witness, I act as the vessel kind of that it all goes through. So people are telling their stories to me individually and then in groups, and then I'm writing them and go, editing it and go. I might have 20 pages of 30 pages on somebody, and I get it down to a page and a half, and I go back and forth with a person. I said, did this distill what you want to say? And till they say, yes, this is it. And then I direct them in their physical motions and music. So there is another eye going into it. What you're all talking about is in some ways more difficult, I think, to do it yourself and trust both the process of getting it out and your own editing capabilities to bring it out. So again, if there is a witness that you can work with, that you trust their feedback, listen. But again, on the other hand, you are the most important witness to yourself. It sounded like there was another question, Ahmed.
Martin, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Teya. I'm going to say good evening because I'm here in Whadjuk Noongar country in Western Australia. Right now it's 10 p.m. over here. And thank you so much for, I missed the beginning, but thank you so much for what you said. I have a question. I just wonder whether in your experience with, people who've been in these difficult situations, whether you've seen them maybe change the story that they've told about themselves as part of, for example, a process of healing, or whether, the process of telling a story itself has been in any way a process of reflection and change for some of these people.
Oh, I would say 100%. Yeah. I think pretty much everybody has said to me that doing this was a bigger healing than going into therapy or anything, that it was a huge healing. It's not so much that they necessarily change the story, especially if they're talking about something that happened in the past, but new things emerge from that story to be touch points that might be the medicine that they didn't notice. Again, it's that holding the mirror up and reflecting the beauty and the love and the strength. I'm always going for the mysterious and the larger, transcendent nature of people's stories. So sometimes people will tell it and they might be stuck in the nitty-gritty of it. Those nitty-gritty is so important, but there's also a bigger story. And once you allow yourself to go into that bigger story, all of the smaller story is true, but there's something else bigger holding it. And I would say that holding it is love, including love for oneself, for things that you might have done that you regret, or for all your own suffering or the suffering you caused another person, any of it. Yeah.
There's a question here from Roa. She's asking if there is any, if you recommend any books that help with refining vocabulary and using the right words in the right context, like for improving storytelling skills?
Oh, again, you're asking me you're asking the wrong person the right question. Um, uh, because I only work with people telling their own stories, so I'm not really working with fictional stories or imaginative stories. I trust the words that come through the people, their own languaging. And I know when I've worked sometimes with an editor or something, they've wanted to fix it and clean it up and say, oh no, they said that wrong. They, you know, or this was an anachronism that they use or something. They always want to clean it up. And I know the beauty is in the way that person speaks, like nobody else, the language that they use. So I would, yeah, so I don't really know if you're talking about trying to write a fictional piece and how would you find the language. I would imagine that you would have to try to imagine yourself into that person and speak that person. But again, I don't do that work, so I'm not the right person to answer that question.
Fair enough. And by the way, if you're part of the project, maybe you can ask Martin. Martin is the boss, and when it comes to vocab, yeah. So hopefully, if we come across any titles that may help with storytelling, when it comes to narration, vocab using vocab, we will suggest some titles. But yeah. Roba says here, in my point of view, I know that my piece of poetry writing is great when I am done. I'd be like, yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to write. I wanted to share and express. Yeah. And always when you receive feedback, comments from others, of course, this gives you an indication of where you are heading. Any other comments or questions, guys? I'm aware of the time, and I know it's early morning for Teya. I don't want to hold for longer, but please, if you have any questions or comments before we wrap up, feel free to send your questions or comments.
And I want to say that if any of you want to write to me, Teya@theaterofwitness.org. I think you got the Theater of Witness link, and feel free to write to me. I will absolutely respond. And if any of you want to be listened to, I will absolutely offer myself to do that. So.
Thank you so much, Teya. And I'm sure everyone feels that you lit up their day, just like how I feel that you lit up our day. And I really appreciate that positivity you bring into the session. And I hope we will have you soon in another session.
It would be beautiful. It'd be beautiful to make a Theater of Witness piece with some of you.
Absolutely.
That would be a dream.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Teya. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
Yeah, could I interrupt? Teya, put those
Sure.
thoughts of retirement on hold. That's all I'm saying.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Oh, I'm just saying, if you don't mind putting those thoughts of retirement on hold.
Oh.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
plenty of work to do here.
Yeah. Love that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, Teya. Thank you, everyone. George, Millie, Martin, Gerard, everyone for joining us. Thank you. Enjoy your evening, enjoy your time, and stay safe. We'll see you soon, inshallah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.